go ahead and get started. We are recording today. That is so you will see the recording of this up on our website as well as our YouTube. I will send out information after, probably later this afternoon, with any follow-up, any questions you all might have, and just my information. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Megan. I am our Outreach and Training Coordinator here at Journey Center for Safety and Healing. Thanks for being here for our second of 4 Lunch and Learn series for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. You are not going to be hearing from me. Originally, you're hearing from Brittany King. She unfortunately had something happen, so instead you are lucky enough to hear from Sarah Framson. She is our director, our shelter director. So she's going to go ahead and talk about our helpline and accessing services, a couple housekeeping things. If you have questions, feel free to just put them in the chat. I will be monitoring as well as Sarah, so we will get your questions about Journey answered. And without further ado, Sarah, take it away.
All right, thank you, Megan. Thank you everybody for taking your time to participate and attend this webinar today. As Megan said, my name is Sarah Framson and I'm our Senior Director of Crisis Housing and Shelter Services. Through that, I also oversee directly our helpline and all of our housing as well as shelter services. So I'm going to talk through today a little bit about our helpline, to give an idea of really the service that we provide over the phone via text and chat, as well as a little bit about how survivors or how a client may access some of our services. All right. First, we want to review once again our mission and vision here at Journey. Journey Center for Safety and Healing provides services that foster safety and healing to those affected by domestic violence and child abuse, and prevents abuse through education, advocacy, and systemic change. Our vision here at Journey Center is to envision a community where safety and well-being are achieved by empowering people to find a path toward healthy, thriving relationships. Megan, I think we were going to do a quick poll. All right. So as we talk about our helpline, we'd like to get a little bit of an understanding of how familiar you guys are with our helpline. Do you know somebody or have yourself who has called our helpline before?
We've got most folks answering. We've got a couple people, but right now we are at 50-50 for yes and no. So we'll give folks another second or two to see if more folks answer.
So we're seeing some familiarity with our helpline, some firsthand experience, which is really wonderful for us as we go into it. So I'm seeing it split about 63% says that they have never contacted our shelter or our helpline and doesn't know anybody, but about 38% have experience with our helpline or know somebody who does. So our 24-hour helpline here at Journey Center, of course, is available 24/7, holidays, weekends, you name it, anytime we are available, because we recognize that survivors are working on their experience, are working on their journey to safety and healing at any time of the day. So it's important that we have trained advocates available to address any questions or concerns and offer that support. In the past 2 years, we have really adapted our helpline. So traditionally, in the past several decades, our helpline has operated specifically using phone services. Within the past 2 years, we have adapted to include to include text services. So people are welcome to text that same number, 391-4357, and a trained advocate will be available to them. We also have added live chat, which can be accessed through our website at journeyneo.org. We're trying to really make sure our helpline and our resources and services are accessible to everybody, and is really using the most comfortable method that people prefer. Over the phone, what a client or what a survivor or even a advocate or social worker or whomever is calling can expect to receive is right away being met with a trained advocate who's been trained in domestic violence as well as safety planning and escape planning. They really focus on assessing the need of who is calling. Are there resources and referrals that we can provide? If we cannot provide in-house services, where are we referring to community partners? A lot of times, about half of our calls are considered what we call our crisis calls. Those are going to be individuals who are identifying themselves as actively fleeing, have had a recent incident. So it's very important our advocates are working with them on safety planning. Escape planning is the language and terminology we use for somebody who is actively attempting to flee domestic violence. So it is really important that we are speaking with the survivor during that process. We're also able to assist with legal information. Our staff are not attorneys. We will not provide any legal guidance, but we will connect people for attorneys who may be able to assist them, as well as our justice system advocacy program, which provides assistance in the court process, both civil and criminal. Another important role our helpline serves is it serves as the intake process for a lot of our programs, specifically our emergency shelter, as well as our therapy program. It's very common for us to receive calls from people who are family or friends, really just looking for guidance about how to support a survivor who is going through domestic violence. And we spend a lot of time processing and recognizing that it is a very difficult experience for a friend or family member to not know where to start or how to best support somebody. All right. So we're going to focus a little bit of our time on the emergency domestic violence shelter, as oftentimes majority of the calls we are receiving, not all, seeking services are focused around emergency crisis housing. Our emergency domestic violence shelter is the only domestic violence shelter in all of Cuyahoga County. What we know about Cuyahoga County is that there's approximately over 1 million people in the county, and we know the rate of victimization for domestic violence is 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men impacted by intimate partner violence or domestic violence in their lifetime. So with those numbers right away, we know that we are always full here at shelter, and we are not able to serve every survivor who needs our services in this shelter setting. We provide immediate relief from violence and abuse for adults and children. We serve women, we serve men, we serve anybody who identifies as domestic violence survivors. A lot of common misconception is our shelter is only available to women, but we do serve male clients as well. During the process of shelter, we work to meet the comprehensive needs of those who have been impacted by abuse. The first thing we start off with is assisting survivors in getting access to their basic needs. That's going to include clothing, hygiene products, bed, nutritious meals and snacks, as well as any basic needs that they might have. A lot of our folks who are coming into our shelter may be fleeing with just the clothes on their back. So we want to make sure that they're met right away with humility, met with resources so that they can feel comfortable and feel like they have their own property again. Once we establish those basic needs, right out the gate, our priority is safety. Folks who are staying in our shelter are actively fleeing, which means that they may have perpetrators who have access to the justice system, who maybe have yet to be arrested or have maybe not at all. So they do pose an active threat in the community. So our focus is really about safety planning, and really helping them build a plan to leave our shelter as successfully and as safely as possible. Our shelter serves about 300 adults and children annually and continues to grow. Just to provide a little bit of insight for COVID, congregate facilities have been a really controversial thing for COVID and spread of COVID in these environments. During this time, our confidential shelter has reduced its census to about 60%. So prior, we have 45 beds and we were almost always full. At this point, we're taking about 32 clients in order to assure social distancing. We are still able to provide comparable services and shelter to those who would traditionally have come through shelter, but unfortunately, due to capacity and safety for the pandemic, we are placing them elsewhere. And I'm happy to answer questions about that as well. Just to get an idea for those who might be in the social work profession, who might be working with a population who sees survivors, or who may have a friend or family who is experiencing domestic violence, to kind of explain the process of how do they access our shelter. One of the most important things is that we do want to speak to the survivor themselves, because it's really important in their step for healing. And part of their journey to healing is that we believe them, and we empower them to speak up about what's happening and what their needs are. Because of the history of abuse, they may have never had that opportunity to articulate what's going on, their needs, and what they're really looking for. So it's important that our advocates speak with the survivor whenever it is safe to do so. So we ask that the survivor contacts our helpline. They will be asked a few screening questions because we want to make sure that we're not asking an overabundance of questions if we know that we don't have space and we know that they're not going to be eligible for our services. After we answer some of these initial questions, we then will complete a shelter intake if we have space available. If we do not have space, we will safety plan and refer out to one of our partner organizations, either in Cuyahoga County or an outside of county domestic violence shelter. Once we complete the shelter intake, the client agrees to our program policies as well as intake procedure, then they are accepted into the shelter. The helpline advocate at that point will discuss safety planning and escape planning with that survivor in order to get to shelter. What happens if they are not accepted into shelter? There's a multitude of reasons why people may not be accepted into shelter. The first tends to be capacity limitations. It's important that we are asking still those initial screening questions, because what often will happen is if we say right away that there is no bed space in shelter, then we're not provided an opportunity to engage with that survivor to provide safety planning regardless. So we want to get all of our questions around safety planning and screening for the helpline are really focused on safety and escape planning. If for whatever reason they are not accepted into shelter, we will still conduct safety planning. We'll provide somewhat of an explanation as to why. Traditionally, it's because we don't have the appropriate space. And then we will provide referrals to other shelters right away or other information as we have a further conversation about their safety, what other resources they may be eligible for. Once a client is in shelter, this is when they are assigned an advocate who will work with them throughout their entire stay. Our average length of stay tends to be about 6 weeks, about 45 days. It ranges for every individual because every individual has their own journey, and it may take longer for certain populations to process through our process. They're going to be connected with an advocate who's going to create a case plan. They're going to assist them with resources, information, referrals. Safety planning is done throughout their entire stay here at shelter. We're going to assist them with the housing programs and getting them into housing, assisting survivors with employment, childcare, any needs that they might have. We really look at it through a comprehensive lens. We're also going to link to other agencies and resources. We really believe in working in a collaborative model for care for our survivors. I want to make sure I address some of these frequently asked questions we get from the community and have a little bit of time for some question and answer. As I told Megan, I can talk about our services for a long time, but I want to make sure I'm hearing from you guys and addressing any concerns or questions you have in regards to how our helpline works. So what does our helpline do? We talked a little bit about that already. But our helpline really is there to provide any type of soft landing for our individuals who are reaching out for our services. We provide support, we provide validation and listening, but we also provide referrals and linkage to internal services here at Journey, as well as external community partners. We safety plan, and as I said, we're constantly providing that emotional support, and it's working on intentional language to support the survivor and help them reframe as they explain their story so that they can really make their way into the beginning of their journey. We do share information. We do get calls, people asking about the services we have, our DV education class, our counseling, support groups, advocacy, shelter, and visitation services. And as I mentioned earlier, we do complete all intakes for our therapy program as well as shelter over the helpline. Why is it so common for those who have experience answering or contacting our helpline? Why is it common that Journey Center is asking these screening questions before we even denote whether we have space or not? It's important that we're doing this because the shelter intake process can be lengthy. And when I say lengthy, it could take up to 30 to 45 minutes over the phone. What we really don't want to do is have any type of system burnout for our survivors. It already took a lot of courage for them to contact our helpline. So we want to make sure that we're not just doing constant assessments that we feel are not appropriate or necessary. So it's important that we're asking a few questions at the beginning to really determine what it is that the survivor is looking for. For example, we do in our shelter, we have some bedrooms that are on a second floor and a first floor. So we might be screening out for clients to see if we have appropriate space for them. If they're unable to climb up the stairs or climb up to a top bunk, and all we have is a top bunk available, then it's important we're asking those questions so that we're not then diving into a deep history of their abuse, their trauma, only for them to say, you know what, I'm not able to get up on a top bunk. I know that's the only bed space you have, but unfortunately I have limitations. We're always happy to accommodate where we can and try to be as flexible as possible. We also want to be mindful of how many children they have. We absolutely support survivors in fleeing with their children when they deem that appropriate. If we conduct an intake and then as we get through the intake, we then find out that they have 5 or 6 children after asking a series of questions, and we really only have 2 bed spaces, then unfortunately we cannot safely provide shelter to those individuals. So just to give an idea as to why we start with that initial thing, we get a lot of calls from people who say, hi, I'm looking for shelter for my clients, or I'm looking for shelter for myself. Do you have space available? So it's really important that, as I mentioned, we are the only domestic violence shelter in all of Cuyahoga County with only 45 beds, or right now about 32 beds, that we're providing shelter to those who are seeking immediate relief from active domestic violence. We also provide referrals to community partners, to our community homeless shelters as needed, and some of our other family shelters. How confidential are Journey Center services? Our services are intentional because we are bound by VAWA laws, which means we as advocates are trained to recognize that the information shared by domestic violence survivors is confidential to everyone, with a couple caveats, unless we have their written or verbal permission to speak with another community partner. It's really common over the helpline that we get hospital social workers or community partners referring clients. And oftentimes the service provider is doing their job, right? You guys are out there trying to get sure that your clients who are identifying domestic violence are getting into the shelter, getting the access to the services they need. Unfortunately, we are not able to discuss a client with these service providers without their permission. So that's why it's really important that if we have a social service provider contacting our helpline, that we are requesting to speak directly to the client. We want to hear the client's voice. We want to hear the survivor's story from their perspective. And then if it's okay with the survivor, which it may or may not be, at that point, we would determine whether or not we can communicate all of the details of what we said to them about our space, about our services. So it is really important, and it's really intentional that we are speaking to the survivor. And once we get a release of information, we are always happy and find it very appropriate to provide that continuity of care to the clients. Another common question we get is, does Journey pay for transportation for relocation? Unfortunately, we do not pay. We do work with Ohio Domestic Violence Network's relocation assistance program when it is appropriate. There is a application process. People are welcome to contact our helpline to speak with a helpline advocate to review if they're eligible for that help, for that relocation assistance through Ohio Domestic Violence Network. There are some caveats, some rules around that, and I'm sure we'd be happy to provide more information if people are looking for it. Another common question we see, and another trend in our field is, can someone come to shelter with their pets? The field is really heading in this way. We recognize that dogs, cats, that they are part of the family. Unfortunately, the way our shelter is built right now, we do not have the space to accommodate pets that are not service animals or emotional support animals. We do have policies in regards to make sure we're providing equitable services to those who do have emotional support or service animals. But at this point, if they are identifying as a pet, we will work over the helpline and once in shelter to help find foster or temporary placement for those pets, which can be difficult and can often be a large barrier to survivors fleeing their relationships, is having to leave behind a pet. So we recognize the importance of it, and as an agency are continuing to follow the trend and see what we can do to keep adapting to this common issue. I'm going to pass it over to Megan to speak a little bit about the rest of this week and the week of action.
So can you, before I do that, can you talk a little bit about accessing our other services while we wait for folks to see if they have any questions in the chat? Like what does it look like if someone's calling for therapy, or I know we'll talk about DV education classes in next week, but what happens if someone's calling not just for shelter? Like, what does that kind of look like?
Absolutely. So sometimes we have callers who reach out to us and know exactly what service they're looking for. Maybe they have been referred, or they're aware, and maybe their GCFS caseworker or a community partner says, Journey Center has parenting or has DV education classes and would like you to attend. So when we get calls like that, they can be pretty straightforward. We will provide them with the intake information, which will be another contact person in our shelter. In our program and organization. We will provide education to make sure that it is the appropriate referral, to make sure what they're looking for is the actual service before we pass them on to that next person. It is also very common that we get folks who are contacting our helpline and are not sure what they're looking for, or maybe looking for one thing, and then through further conversation and dialogue, we are able to introduce them to other services. We have visitation services, and we have a slide to go over all of our services, but the helpline really serves as the point of access, the point of entry into all of our services. The two in-depth assessments that are done are going to be our therapy intake, as well as our shelter intake. But all other services, people can contact our helpline, and we will connect them and also screen and have conversations with them so they know what to expect from our other programs and services. And then we will connect them to the appropriate party to conduct those intakes as well.
Awesome. And then one final question. Is it just like victims that can call the helpline, or can friends or family? What happens if they call, or like someone who's a case manager who has a victim of DV and they have never worked with DV before? Can they call as well?
Absolutely. Great question. When people think of a DV helpline, they think of survivors only contacting. Our helpline is designed to really receive calls from anyone. We receive calls from survivors themselves. We receive calls from family, friends of survivors. We receive calls from social service providers, from supervisors at work who are concerned about their staff members. We receive calls from police departments who have questions about how to process. We receive calls from everybody and anyone. When we pick up that phone, we don't know who we're going to get, but we are prepared to provide that support and education on our services, and sometimes just be a listening ear and provide that reflective listening, as we call it. Absolutely.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions I have. So as we kind of wrap up, we've got maybe 6 minutes or so left. So still plenty of time for folks you have access to Sarah here. So please ask us questions in the chat, or use that Q&A box. But I would be remiss as our training and outreach person if I didn't also mention why we are doing this, right? Because it's DVAM, Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So we have a lot of stuff. This is our second, like I said, and fourth Lunch and Learn series. Next week, you all will hear from Vicki, who is our lead justice system advocate. She is the manager of that program. And then the following Thursday, what is that? The 26th, you will hear from Carrie, who is our prevention and education manager. And she's going to be talking about more how you mentioned, Sarah, DV education classes, our outreach efforts in the community, and so on. We also, I think it's so important. Next week is a week of action. It's kind of the first week that we are doing this. So there are tons of ways for you to get involved. And so again, because I am nosy, is anyone planning on participating in our week of action next week? Yes, you can't wait at least one day, or maybe, right? It can be Monday, messages of support to victims or survivors. Send us a message on social media, tag us on social media. Thursday is National Wear Purple Day. So wear your outfit, like take a cute selfie, right? I hope you all are better at selfies than I am. I think I've passed the age of being able to be good at selfies. We'll share it on our stories if you want on Friday, Philanthropy Friday, as well as our DV advocacy training, where you all will get to hang out with me, talking really about how to serve those survivors, as Sarah said. And then Saturday, Speak Up Saturday, where we're really encouraging folks to have conversations. So, okay, we've got some mixed results. We'll still give folks a little bit of time. But so Heather asks, hey, Heather, if a survivor is not accepted in the shelter, is Journey able to provide assistance related to clothing, cell phones, gift cards, etc.? Sarah, can you answer that one? I'll leave this poll up just for 30 more seconds.
I had to unmute myself. Absolutely. Thank you, Heather, for that question. It's a great question. You know, what we do is each case can be very different and unique. So what we do is that we ask, you know, for people to call regardless, and then we will either, depending on their case, and if we can link them to any other internal services at Journey Center, then we're absolutely able to directly provide access to client assistance through some of our programs. If for whatever reason they're not looking for other programs other than shelter, then we will provide community referrals that we know, because we confirm those referrals, that they're able to access some of these basic needs, including clothing, cell phones, gift cards, hygiene items, food pantries, things like that. So we will provide them with direct referrals if we are not able to provide them with that direct financial assistance in-house.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. And thanks, Heather, for the question. Yeah, that also leads to, so, you know, I think the question we always get, like financial assistance, housing, we do what we can, but it's so important. So I'm going to lead that right into contacting your representative. So we have information up on, that's a good segue. We have information up on our website about VAWA has still not been renewed. They were doing hearings last week. The Family Violence Service Prevention Act has not been renewed yet. So we have information up on how to contact your representatives to tell them to pass those important, that important legislation. Also in Ohio, strangulation is not a felony. It is not a specific crime. So there is Senate Bill 90 in Ohio right now that's in committee. So if you want to contact your representatives about that as well, those are really important action steps you all can take, right? It seems like most folks are maybe not quite sure about a week of action, but that's something really, really simple we can do, right? And that's why we made Speak Up Saturday, Wearing Purple, super easy awareness super easy awareness things that we can all do that have a really, really big impact. So we've got about 2 or 3 minutes left, so I want to leave space for anyone else that has questions. Like I said, I will be sending a follow-up email. So if you think of something, you know, tonight when you're laying in bed or watching whatever you're watching, feel free to respond to that email. I'm not going to respond until tomorrow, but I will respond, or I will connect you to the correct person that can answer those questions, right? We are here and we understand that now that you've heard about us, right? It's like when you talk about a car, there's going to be an instance that comes up next week for you all. And so we know that. So give a couple more minutes. And if there are no other questions, thank you all for being here. We hope you'll join us next week and the following week. And thank you, Sarah, for stepping in. So appreciate you taking the time. So
Pleasure. Thank
thanks,
you, everybody.
everybody.